Nothing really tops off Boxing Day more than a traditional ghost story, and this year I thought I'd share one with you, as usual with my normal local twist. As you may have seen from my Halloween videos, there is no shortage of ghost stories in the local area, but today I thought I'd bring you one of my favourites, a warning against the dangers of greed and taking what doesn't belong to you, the legend of Callow Pit. The legend of Callow Pit is a very old one, possibly dating back about 500 years in one form or another. The pit itself is located near the grounds of Southwood Church, on the parish boundaries of Malden, St Mary's, and Cantley in South Norfolk. Rather than being a straight drop into a pit, it is filled with deep, dark water. This is where our story begins. It was a hot summer's day, many, many years ago. Two young men. Their names have since been lost to history, but their professions are still known. One was a thatcher, and the other a carpenter. For clarity of storytelling, I will refer to them by these titles. They had been friends since childhood, and were well known locally for their adventurous spirit and fondness for practical jokes and pranks, something that hadn't diminished with age, despite them now having their own families to provide for. One morning they went for a walk together, joking, chatting away, and putting the world to rights as they always did. If it did nothing more, it helped take their minds off their troubles when it came to money and feeding their families. They approached Callow Pit, an area they knew well, having played there countless times as children. The place was the same as it always was, except with one stark difference. The water in the pit was low, far lower than either of them had ever seen it. They crept to the edge of the pit and looked down into the looming darkness. Neither had to say it, they both knew what they were looking for, the mythical chest of treasure that had long been said to lurk in the water's depths. "Do you see anything? Is it there?" asked the carpenter, hoping his friend had better eyesight than him. "No," came the reply. "It's too dark to see anything, and it probably doesn't exist anyway. Let's not waste our time." "But what if it does? Think about everything we could do with that treasure. We'd be as rich as kings. We'd never have to worry again. This might be our only chance. We should at least give it a try," replied the carpenter, shocked by his friend's sudden lack of adventurousness. Stepping back, they smiled, thinking of all they could do with the abundance of gold, silver, and jewels. Their daydreaming was quickly shattered by some rather grim apprehension from Thatcher. "Don't they say that old Nick, the devil himself, guards that treasure? We don't want to fall foul of him now, do we?" Carpenter laughed and reassured his friend. "An old wives' tale to keep people like us away from getting their hands on the gold. Just relax. I'm going home to get my longest ladders and a shear hook. I want you to do the same. Come back with your longest pole and find some rope." Their minds filled with dreams of riches, they ran to their homes and soon hurried back with everything they needed. They lay their ladders across the pit, fixing them in place to stop them from sliding, and starting from opposite ends, both men slowly edged towards each other, sliding on their stomachs until they were face to face. They were now in position to get to work. Using the long wooden pole, Carpenter probed the muddy depths of the pit. After a few minutes of searching, as the heat of the day blazed down upon them, they struck something. "I've got something!" he exclaimed in delight. Following his friend's instructions, Thatcher dropped the shearing hook tied to a rope into the murky water. After a couple of attempts, he felt the hook catch around something. The two of them took up the strain on the rope and began to raise their catch from the darkness. As it came into the sunlight, they couldn't believe their eyes. A large wooden and metal chest, with a large metal ring on top that the shearing hook had made contact with. It took all their strength, and several agonizing minutes where they thought they might drop the chest and have to start again, but they soon had their prize in reach. Finally grabbing hold of the chest, they slowly stood up on their ladders and began to inch away from the centre to the safety of solid ground. At this point, either overconfidence or a lack of belief took over Carpenter, and he yelled out in delight, "We did it! The gold's ours! Even old Nick himself can't stop us now!" The moment these words left his lips, the ground began to shake, nearly sending both of them plummeting from the ladder. From the bottom of the pit, a stream of thick black smoke and steam rose up in a flash, engulfing the two men, and the air was filled with a breath-stealing sulphur smell. As the smoke cleared, the two men saw their greatest fear. A large, pitch-black hand with long, razor-sharp claws was rising from the pit, getting closer and closer. Coming up between them, it grabbed hold of the side of the chest. With all notions of their own safety now cast aside, Carpenter and Thatcher grabbed hold of the large ring on top of the chest, and a tug of war began between the men and the devil himself. Despite the supernatural strength of this beast from the underworld, the men fought back with their best, and it seemed as though they might be a match for old Nick. Sadly, the chest wasn't made for this kind of strain. With a crack, it split in half. The men could do nothing but watch as more gold than either of them had ever seen or imagined poured from the chest down into the depth once again, never to be seen again by the mortal eye. With the gold now back where it came from, the large hand also began to sink away, slowly disappearing below the muddy water of the pit, and a deep, inhuman laugh rang out. Dejected, the men began to gather their tools and leave the pit. We almost had it. We were rich, moaned Thatcher. And what makes matters worse, no one's ever going to believe us. Yes, they will. We still have this, came the reply from his friend, holding up the large metal ring, their only prize from their battle with Satan. As they left, the sky darkened and the rain began. It fell hard, and in a matter of minutes the pit was once again filled to the brim, making any more attempts to search impossible. The water level of the pit has never dropped to what they saw that day again. It is unknown how much the two men were believed, but the large metal ring is said to have been placed on the main door of Southwood Church, to act as a door knocker and to remind all those who visited the perils of challenging the devil. Southwood Church fell into disrepair in the late 1800s and now stands as an overgrown derelict. The metal ring was taken from the church and now once again acts as a door knocker, this time on the north door of St Botolph's Church near Norwich, a fitting location, as the north door of a church is commonly referred to as the Devil's Door. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. All the pictures used can be found in the description below. Feel free to subscribe and like if you wish. This was a Boxing Day ghost story, The Legend of Callow Pit, and this was a little bit of history.